If you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, contact the National Eating Disorder Association helpline. More information can be found at www.nationaleatingdisorders.org.
Hi, Diana Freik here. I'm the host of the Gooder podcast, where I get to talk with the powerhouse women in the food, beverage, and wellness categories about their journeys to success and their insights on the industry. This episode is brought to you by Retail Voodoo, a brand development firm that specializes in food, beverage, and wellness brands. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, High Key, and many other market leaders. We provide strategic brand, design, and marketing services for leaders. This is totally screwed up. I'm going to re-record that. Sorry.
Okay.
I read it out of order. Okay. Retail Voodoo is a brand development firm. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, High Key, and many other market leaders. We provide strategic brand and design services for brands in the food, wellness, beverage, and fitness industries. So if your goal is to increase market share, drive growth, or disrupt the marketplace with new and innovative ideas, give us a call and let's talk. To learn more, you can find us at retail-voodoo.com. Well, super excited to introduce our guest today, Allie Bonar, who is CEO or Chief Vibes Officer, if you're checking her LinkedIn profile status out, and co-founder of Oat Haus, a food company on a mission to bring fun and play back to food. Their flagship product, Granola Butter, is the world's first oat-based spread and was born out of Allie's eating disorder recovery. Oat Haus is available in just over 1,200 stores, including Whole Foods, Sprouts, Harris Teeter, The Fresh Market, and more. And Allie lives in Philadelphia with her partner, Eric, and their dog, Squishy. I love that. That's so awesome. Hi, Allie. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so you guys are in Philly. Are you going to be at Expo?
We are. Yeah, we're exhibiting. I forget our booth number, but we'll be there.
Okay.
I mean, it's a smaller show, so you'll probably find us. Are you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Yes, absolutely going.
Mm-hmm.
We won't have a booth. I go around and I get to visit with people like you during the show. And there's also a pitch slam that I'm judging on Wednesday. Is that right? Yes, on Wednesday before the show. So I'll be there for that as well. Yeah.
Yay. So excited.
I know. Well, so let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about Oat Haus and why it exists.
Yeah, definitely. So, so our product, Granola Butter, is the world's first oat-based spread. So think the texture of a peanut butter, almond butter, but we actually use oats instead of nuts. So it's full safe, nut-free, all the things, but it doesn't taste allergen-free, I promise you. So yeah, the idea came out of my eating disorder recovery. I had struggled for over a decade with multiple eating disorders, mostly orthorexia, which is lesser known, but it's becoming more well-known. But when I was struggling with it, no one talked about it. But basically what it is this obsession with eating, perfectly clean all the time. So sort of like healthy eating taken to the extreme. And especially now with the rise of the wellness industry, I think that's why there's more just awareness around it. But how it, presented for myself was just, almost this like OCD type tendency around food where it was like I had very strict, rigid food rules. I only allowed myself to eat certain things. I never went out to eat because that was really stressful for me because I didn't know what was in the food. So as you can imagine, it was just like a very stressful, toxic headspace. And so, that was sort of the main thing that I struggled with. And then also I binge ate as a result of that, because obviously when you're restricting food so heavily, your body just kind of have to swing the other way. So I'm really passionate about talking about this stuff because, number one, I didn't look like I had an eating disorder, just weight wise, because I think we were all taught that, if you had an eating disorder, you were emaciated and you were skin and bones. And obviously with, the restriction and the binging, like my weight would fluctuate a lot. And so that's, something I'm really passionate about, spreading the word about is just how eating disorders don't have a look, because it kept me stuck for a long time, just feeling like I didn't deserve to get treatment, or I didn't, I wasn't sick enough. Didn't look a certain way. So yeah, that was, I struggled with that for about 10 years. And then, really hit my sort of rock bottom, so to speak. I think it was around like 2016. And I had graduated college. I was living in San Francisco. I was actually working in tech, as some people do in San Francisco.
As some people.
Yeah, the cliche, trifecta.
Yes.
The Berkeley to a tech startup.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just really tired. Like I was just mentally so done with everything I was putting myself through. And I think people, they say that you realize, you're operating a certain way, and sort of, I think once you hit that rock bottom, even though it's scary as hell to kind of, venture into the unknown of what this other life would look like, I just knew I couldn't keep continuing the way I was going. So I reached out for help. I told this therapist who I started working with. She was the first person I ever told that I was struggling with any of this stuff. And so
interesting.
That's a whole nother piece. Yeah. That is interesting about, eating disorders, is so many people suffer in silence. And so, I felt like I was the only one in the world going through this. And it's just like, LOL, like now I talk about it so openly. And so people just come out of the woodwork. It's like, everyone has a story with food. It's a spectrum, obviously, but I think everyone has had, moments where there is a little bit of disordered relationship, or just body image insecurity. We all kind of struggle in certain ways. So it's very common. People just don't talk about it. It's becoming more common to talk about it, which I'm proud. But and so that was sort of 2016. And then, the idea for our company came out of my recovery, as I mentioned. So a big part of my recovery process was adding my fear foods back into my diet. So, so the almond butter, the peanut butter, some of these nut butters I was really terrified of for some reason. And so as I started to add them back in, I really had a hard time digesting the nuts, just because my body was obviously a mess from treating it like trash for 10 years. And so my nutritionist at the time was like, you should try sunflower seed butter, soy nut butter, like some of these nut-free options, just until you get your body kind of back to, optimal. And I tried them and I was like, these are so bad. Like, I can't believe that, people with nut allergies have to eat these. Like, objectively, they're just not good.
Yeah.
And so I was really, it came out of my own, need or product. And I was just pissed. And I was like, I'm not eating these, like, and I don't even have nut allergies. So it was 2017, right around when oat milk was sort of like coming on the scene. And I had this epiphany, why don't we do an oat-based spread? That would be fun. So that's where the idea came from. And then, we've been running it for about 4.5 years from there. So that's the origin story.
Wow. So there's a lot in there, right? Like
just a little,
it's so interesting to me that, it's interesting to me that somebody who struggled with, and I should say not struggled as in past tense, it's probably something that you will have lifelong, I'm guessing. Or
like the thoughts definitely still come up, but I think it's about how I have the tools now. I have the best relationship I've ever had with food. Like, I barely think about food now, but I will say, it's not something where I'm like, the thoughts are gone. Like, I still have bad body image days, and it's like, oh, okay, that's an interesting thought, but I'm not going to treat it as like the truth.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this then, right? So you and I spend a lot of time at your product, and then most of our clients are in the naturals industry, and the naturals industry and how we currently still represent real healthy lifestyles has probably been doing a disservice to a lot of people, kind of like yourself, like overemphasizing features and benefits, or all the marketing, like all the women look the same and all the men look the same. As you've been going on this journey and you've been creating this brand, you probably have a different way of looking at marketing in light of just your story, your founder story. What do you recommend that marketers consider as they're doing their marketing, so that they don't contribute or accelerate this type of thinking for the category as a whole?
Yeah, that's honestly such an important question, and one that I'm just so grateful that you're even asking, because it's not something that people even think about. And it's especially insidious around like the new year, new you time. I have been known to call out a few brands on my Instagram stories during that time, just because it's like, the detoxes and all. It's like, it's so unnecessary. And I get it. Like, from a marketer's perspective, let's be real. Like, the Facebook ads that do the best, the Instagram ads that do the best are, things that are sort of very dramatic,
transformations.
Transformations and before and afters and like all of that stuff. And that's what the algorithm unfortunately prioritizes and applauds. But I will say I think, the damage is worse than the pro. And I think you just have to take into account, what impact are you putting on young men and women? Obviously, eating disorders are mostly women, but there is a lot of men that are afraid to speak up because they think of it as like a female disorder. It's becoming more prevalent too. And so, I encourage people to just take a second, just take a beat and like really take a step back and question, is this content I'm putting out really beneficial, or am I just doing it because that's what the algorithm, really prioritizes? And I think if you really think about it, there are other ways to go about it. Like, for us, we really emphasize taste. Like, that's the biggest thing. And it's like, we could easily go out there and be like, we're a better for you cookie butter. Our ingredients are better. Our nutritional panel is better. But, and we've played around with that. And it's just like, it does well, but then there's this like icky feeling, that I have of like, well, then I'm just like demonizing another product. For what, and then maybe someone's watching this and all they can afford is cookie butter.
Right.
And all of a sudden they feel guilty for eating it. So I don't know. It's obviously no one's perfect. Right. And like, I know we all have businesses to run, and like, that's important too. But I think it's just being more conscientious about it and just thinking for a second, are there other ways to do it? So we really take, more mindfulness around, prioritizing taste and kind of that like food porn, like, look how delicious this looks, because I think that's something that everyone can resonate with, and it does really well. It's kind of like, sex sells when it comes to food, but it doesn't demonize anything or, promise like life altering benefits. So
it's super tricky because, I think we've been habitualized, our side of this industry, which is on building brands, both from a business standpoint and then also from a creative standpoint. And there are times, I would say more so in the past than now, where we would bring more healthier looking people into kind of comps and mood boards and that sort of thing, and get a little bit of pushback saying, well, that's, that doesn't look like a healthy lifestyle. And I'm like, that person's a size 00, or not a 00, but they might be a size 8, and the reality is that I think that there's this disconnect, and correct me if I'm wrong, between, I think that the industry as a whole, and this could be our culture as a whole too, has kind of subscribed to this ideal that we must always be looking at our ideal, anything that's idealistic, meaning, I only want to see women who are successful in a size 0 and making $1 jillion. And the reality is I think there are more people out there that would like to see real people represented in marketing, but I'm not talking about all the time either. Like, a healthy mix is a healthy mix. So I think it's tricky, particularly when some of the younger brands hire younger employees, and they may not be struggling with weight issues at all at that period of time, or they might be kind of like you, where you came out of nutrition. And I think you were talking about, when we were prepping for this call, that it was really easy to kind of hide that this thing was going on, because remind me, what is the specific It's not,
orthorexia.
yeah, orthorexia. Like the fact that people don't know that, like you started describing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I now know there's a person in my life that behaves that way. And now I'm like, oh, that's that kind of behavior. I wonder if that's what's going on in there.
Yeah.
But the hiding between height, weight, proportionate and having it all pulled together is tricky for us. And I think good for us to remember that representation is not, is a little bit more broader than just being brown people or just being women, or like there's 100 ways to look at the fact that food means different things to different people, and to take that all into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with brands too, representation matters in all different ways. But I think, when it comes to food, like you said, yeah, it's so emotional. It's so cultural. It's like political. It's social. Like food is actually really, we just think of it as, oh, it's just food. It's not that important. It plays a huge role for every single person on this planet. So, sometimes I kind of joke, which I shouldn't, because it's like, I'm almost like dismissing myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing brain surgery. Like I literally just have a granola company, and, but it is important. And I think it does, you can make a difference, even if you are just, it's just food. Like I would disagree, because and it's something that it's 3+ touch points a day. So, I think the food industry is really important.
Yeah. Well, let's go back in time if we can a little bit. And when you're looking at your career, I always like to ask, is there some period in your early work history that you see as being instrumental to the building of this brand? Was there an experience or person that you met that absolutely contributed to this brand?
Yeah. I mean, so many. I think, I think obviously the eating disorder experience played an instrumental role for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously wouldn't be here without, without that experience. But, and I think I mentioned that, and I love talking about that, because for anyone listening, it sucks when you are just like at the rock bottom, or you're struggling with something and you think it's like, oh, like, F this, like, why is this happening to me? And I've felt that for a long time, almost this like, woe is me, like victim mentality. Yeah. And now looking back, I'm like, that was the greatest gift in my life. Like, wow. I'm so grateful that happened. So I think obviously when you're going through tough moments, it's annoying to like hear that, because you're just like, it's like, go away. I'm, struggling right now. But if you can try your best to like, remember that there's always a lesson, or there's always some like silver lining within that, those tough moments, it does help sometimes. So, but then I think another experience or, moment in my work history that really contributed was, coming from the tech industry. Like I had never worked in food before. I think, a lot of our, like how we got into Whole Foods, for example, I didn't know how the food industry worked. I didn't know brokers or distributors or anything. I just found, the buyer on LinkedIn, and then I, figured out what her name was. So I started like trying different combinations of like first name dot last name at wholefoods.com. And I just kept sending emails until I didn't get a bounce back. And so I think that naivete of not knowing how the food industry works actually benefited us for a long time, because, we weren't paying all these middlemen, and we kind of just slid our way into different stores without knowing how it works. Obviously, you get to a certain point growth wise where it's, that doesn't work anymore. But in the beginning, it was, it actually did help, because we thought about things from a tech perspective. We didn't think about things from the food industry perspective, where, to be honest, I think our industry is pretty antiquated compared to other ones. So there's just certain things where every time I approach it, I'm like, why are we doing it this way? Like, is there a better way? And so we actually, we haven't used any brokers to this point. Obviously, we're not
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And like, now we're starting to approach some of the more conventional players. And so obviously I know we probably should, but it's just like that mentality of like, well, everyone else is doing it. Like, is there a reason for that? Do I have to, like, why do I have to give up 5% or whatever it is? Like, doesn't the buyer want to hear my story from my mouth as the founder? So I don't know. We've been approaching it that way, which I'm not saying it's better, but I'm just saying it's different.
Yeah. Well, at some point that won't be scalable. You'll get so big and there's only one of you. So you'll have to find different ways, but it doesn't necessarily have to be brokers. It could be other people on your team that can speak from that place of passion, particularly if you make it, if it's possible to make it a priority to hire other people that have a similar background with food with you, then you get that authenticity from multiple people. It doesn't have to then just be your story. It could be our story, right? Like, I think that's really powerful, but definitely on the front, I get that. It's so funny, the things that we have to do in business, even on our side too, where you're just like, okay, well, I guess this is how you pay to, you have to pay to play. At some point, you have to make the decision to cross that bridge. But boy, hold on to that 5% as long as you can, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. And that's the thing too, is like, I think that it's been our greatest, like blessing, but also it can be like our downfall and our toxic trait of Eric and I, my partner and I are, and Ari, our third co-founder, we're all just like very stingy when it comes to money. Yeah. And so like we bootstrapped this company for so long. And so, it's like, you got to spend money to make money. I get that. But then there's always that part of me that's like, do we though? Like, I don't know, like we could just do it ourselves. So I think that's also been an interesting learning experience as we've grown. Cause we're now at this, stage, we have about 30 employees where it's like, okay, like you said, it's not scalable for me to respond to our Instagram DMs and like do all this stuff. So outsourcing and delegating has been a little challenging for me to release that control.
Yeah, totally get that. Many people who've been listening to this podcast know that I've gone back to school for my MBA. And that is like one of the things that we're doing right now is financial tools and starting to monetize if you say $50 doing it this way, but if you'd pay the $50, you could make $100 million,
totally. Yeah.
So we're learning about, my cohort is learning about that. I am learning about that. It's all new. It's super dorky, geeky fun. I
love that. Yeah.
Well, maybe let's talk about a milestone here that you're proud of, whether it was with Oat Haus or something else. Something that you're like, if I was to, the one or two things where you're like, this is what I'd like to be known for, or what I like to look back and say, yeah, I did good here.
Oh, yeah. I love that question. Yeah. What's interesting? Like when I started this business, I thought these milestones would be when we got into Whole Foods, when we went on Shark Tank, when we got into whatever, when we made our first $1 million, like all of those things I thought would fulfill me and would light me up. And they're cool. Like, don't get me wrong. They're super fun for a split second. But it's been really sobering to realize the more we grow, I'm just like, this isn't the fulfillment. This isn't why. This isn't my why.
Yeah.
And that has changed because when I started the business, I, coming from the tech space, my goal was to exit quickly. And I thought that was going to be where my fulfillment came from. And I've never been driven by money, but I'm more driven by sort of that like wow factor. Yeah. And I think, having a big exit is like a big wow factor. And it's changed so much like as we've done this. And now of course, I want our business to succeed, whatever that looks like. But those things I realize aren't going to fulfill me. And it's taken moments of extreme loneliness and emptiness during this journey and feeling like, why am I doing this? To really realize that those aren't it. And so I think a lot of founders realize that too along the way. But yeah, I think those milestones that actually really kind of sink in for me are, like learning how to be a better leader and learning how to manage employees in a way that serves them and serves our company. And like, that was all new to me. I'd never been a leader before. And then also just like, seeing people interacting and enjoying our product and like giving it to their kids and giving it to their friends. And I don't know, that's like really cool. I think a milestone for me actually, which is so funny. I was on a walk. Like I just go on walks around my neighborhood every morning. And I saw an empty granola butter jar, like someone had littered like on the street.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my God, we made it. I'm like, litter. Like, I'm like, we fucking made it. So that was really funny because I don't know. It's like moments like that you're just like, oh my gosh, like someone
Yes.
littered my,
somebody littered my stuff.
yeah, I'm like not telling people to litter, but it was just
Yeah.
funny. But yeah, sometimes like seeing it in the wild in ways that you don't expect. So yeah, I think that's been kind of cool, but it's more around enjoying the process. And it sounds so cliche and annoying. And I would have like rolled my eyes before, really sinking in now where it's like, you can't live for this end goal in the future that like may not even come, because if it does, and I've talked to founders who have exited, they're like, it's kind of like, it's not that great. Like you're excited for a second, you see your bank account go up, obviously it's life-changing money, but then you're like, now what? You work so hard to be on this journey and then it happens, you kind of feel lost, I think.
Yeah. We have been we've worked with lots of brands. We've had brands come to us that have said, build us for an exit. We've had other companies who have said an exit would be nice. And what I've, in all these years that we've been working with brands and then also meeting amazing people like yourself, is whether it's a brand inside a company like PepsiCo, they acquire somebody or they spin something off, or somebody like you that's starting from something from scratch. What I have found is I feel like people are, like you're saying, dissatisfied with an exit unless they're really like serial entrepreneurs and that's just a high that they get, but those people that build a brand out of a place of love and community or whatever, an exit to exit never feels satisfying, versus, you could be like a Cynthia Tice who sold lilies to Hershey's after 30 years. And it was like, because the time was right, like it was time. But usually what I see is those people that are like, I want to build this really big so that I can sell it. And then they're disappointed with what happens next. Like they're no longer part of the brand. Somebody comes in and optimizes it and starts doing things with the ingredient profiles or changes the marketing. And then you realize, oh crap,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what's interesting, like I just thought of as you were talking was like, yeah, very, very recently, actually, I just become more, as we've grown, and we're still small, obviously, but like, you start to delegate things. I become more disconnected from our customer. And I realized I was the one responding to DMs. I was interacting with the customer, demos. And lately I've been feeling so unfulfilled and sort of empty and almost like, am I back in my 9 to 5, because I'm like, oh, I'm optimizing email flows, but like, who am I affecting? And so I think that's another just natural progression that happens for founders is as you become less connected to your end customer and you don't see that interaction, you don't see that, impact that you're making.
Yeah.
And so that's been challenging for me, just being, realizing that. So I'm trying to reincorporate that in certain ways, because otherwise you're like, well, what am I doing this all for?
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Like part of it might be that you need to, move operations to somebody else so that you can be the interfacer. Like you don't need to be responding to DMs, but you could be going to events and interacting with people and that sort of thing. And you'll find your way. Entrepreneurs, especially, those first few years sometimes it's just a matter of what it is you're willing to give up is really, and what are you good at? Right. That's my big thing is, what am I good at? Sometimes I'm like looking at this going, really, I'm not as good as really, should I really be doing this?
Yeah.
And we've been doing this. I've been working with David since 2006 and I still have those moments like, why am I doing this? This is not my zone of genius, as we like to call it here internally. So you'll get there. There. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, not like I'm going to contribute this. I'd love for you to kind of tell us what advice you would give to somebody who might be following in your footsteps of either a new food brand or a new brand.
Yeah.
Or newer.
Yes, absolutely. I always love to take the approach of just the mental health side because that's
Important.
my love language. So I'm sure people want more logistical things, but
I don't think so. I think,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. But I wish I would have because I just, started going to therapy on a regular basis probably almost a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I would have done it sooner. Like I wish I would have done it, the second you have a business idea, or even if you're not starting a business, like obviously it's important for everyone. So I see a talk therapist and then bi-weekly, so every other week. And then the weeks I don't see her, I see a somatic therapist, which is like body-based therapy, which has been really cool. So anyways, yeah, but I think just having that support system, whether it's therapy, whether it's, friends, whether it's your partner, is so important because it really is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it just mentally, you need that support. And I think that's why therapy is my first tip because, it's just as a professional, they know the questions to ask, and that objective third party is so important. It's like, someone who's connected to you, they're going to have like a biased viewpoint perspective. So yeah, that's like the biggest thing I would say. And then second thing is I know in the beginning, it's harder to find that work-life balance or carve out that play and that fun for yourself. But I got so burned out, like the first few like the first year or two.
Yeah.
Eric, Ari, and I, my co-founders, we made the first 100,000 jars ourselves. And before we hired our first employee, we were pulling like 16-hour days. We were working in this windowless kitchen. I remember I would get in when it was dark outside. I would leave when it was dark.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm.
And it was just soul sucking. And I think at what I wish I would have done was maybe, we would have, maybe we saved a little bit of money doing it ourselves, but like hiring someone, just to give you that cushion. So, I didn't take a weekend for years. Like I worked all
my gosh. Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. And I don't think we should glamorize that because it's just unhealthy. And I got really sick from it. And so, and really burned out. And so that was sort of, I had to, reassess and take a step back and be like, wait, why am I doing this? So, even though in the beginning, it feels like you have to do everything yourself, you really don't.
Yeah.
There is people that can support you. So
agreed.
Those would be like my top 2 tips, I think.
Thank you. I love that. I just hired, I didn't say our household, we just hired what I call an Alice. I'm franchising this concept out. Do you ever watch The Brady Bunch? Do you know that show?
Yeah.
You know who Alice is?
Totally. Yeah.
We hired an Alice.
Yeah.
But she doesn't live in our house, but I'm going to school. My husband and I both spend a jillion hours working. Yeah. We have 2 kids and a dog in the house. It kind of gets like barely maintenance. And I was like, well, hire a house cleaner and a this and a that. And then it's like, can I hire an Alice? And then I felt like it was super bougie of me to do that. And I started feeling like guilt around it. And I found somebody who only worked 2 days a week and is does all my meal planning, does the house, and like, amazing. So getting help does not necessarily have to be getting help at work. It could be getting help home front too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember when we were filming Shark Tank, I started paying for a meal delivery service, just Monday through Friday, lunch and dinner. And I see same with you. I think women, I don't know, we just feel guilty about everything. And I was like, this is so bougie. I remember it was like, $13 a meal. And I was like, this is so expensive. Like, why am I doing this? And I just never canceled it because I was like, this is life-changing. Like,
yes,
I love food. I love cooking, but it's, during the week, I don't want to have to think about what I'm making for lunch. Like opening the fridge and just having something I can heat up is life-changing. So I agree with you. I think it's like those little things that maybe to someone else that wouldn't be life-changing, but you have to find, what's like a priority to you.
Agreed. Wow. Well, so what's next for you or Oat Haus? What's anything that you can share? Give us a peek into the future.
Yes. So we are working on some new products. Can't share what they are, but obviously, but it's outside the jar. So using our product in different ways, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Which is super exciting. So we're in R&D with that, which with our granola butter, we obviously R&D'd everything ourselves. And this is the first time we're working with a third party, like food science company. And it has just been night and day, so life-changing, because obviously they have just the expertise that we don't. So again, talk about delegating. And so that's been, really cool to see. And then what else? We are growing. I mean, we're just like growing the team. And we are talking to some conventional retailers, which is super exciting. Because that's, always, I think, kind of the scariest part as a natural food product is just like, is this going to resonate with the mainstream consumer? And then you have to do that if you want to grow to become a household name, right? It's like not everyone shops at Whole Foods and not everyone can afford that. And so, working on, new formulations. Do we want to do a conventional SKU that's a little bit cheaper and for more price sensitive customers? So it's not organic. A no stir option. So not everyone is open to separation. So do we want to incorporate something like palm oil to create a no stir alternative for the conventional shopper? Like those sort of decisions is what we're working through right now.
Gotcha.
And it's hard. It's like there's no right answer because, you don't want to alienate your customer base that's super natural and like super against palm oil. But at the same time, someone who's buying Peter Pan peanut butter isn't going to want a nice little oil slick on the top of their jar when they open it up. So those are the conversations we're having right now.
No, those really super awesome. One of the things that I've been drumming into this industry for a while, and if anybody's listened to previous podcasts, is the naturals industry and our target audience is actually quite narrow, and the opportunity for growth and the opportunity to make really amazing impact on people's health is in the not traditional better for you consumer. There are people that are never going to go to kale chips, but they will try something like yours if it tastes good and it doesn't look weird, and all the things that are barriers for people who are mainlining Mountain Dew and Cheetos, which I love Cheetos, so there's no diss, but how do you get people to move from there to here is our baby steps, and addressing those things like the way you guys are the way you guys are doing it is exactly how we get them to take the baby steps.
It's so true. And what's so scary as a brand is the customers. So we baby stepped it when we we've done this more indulgent line. So we did like brownie. And we started using natural flavoring, and we had never used that in our products. Oh my gosh. The people, like, it's like the, most vocal person, like that you feel like that's the majority. So all of a sudden we're like, shit, like people were so, angry about these natural flavors. And then we realized, wait, this is actually a really tiny subset. They're just really loud. and it's the same thing with the allergen-free consumer. For a long time, we thought that was our customer, and we realized, no, like our product is allergen-free, but we're not an allergen-free company. Like we just happen to be allergen-free because that market is so tiny. But they're just obviously super vocal because it's a life-threatening allergy. So that's been, I think, scary because as a brand, and especially a startup, you don't want to alienate everyone or anyone because you're like, I can't afford to lose anyone, versus
exactly.
Like PepsiCo, they're like, we own pretty much everyone anyway, so it's fine. But you have to make those hard decisions sometimes because you're right. It's like that market just expands dramatically when you can get the customer who's, like guzzling Mountain Dew for breakfast. And then maybe you have them make a choice like granola butter. Okay, maybe it has a little palm oil in it, but it's like gluten-free oats, everything else is pretty much going to be an upgrade for them nutritionally.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Great conversation. We're coming up on the last couple of questions that I like to ask everybody, and I'll start with this one. Are there any other women leaders or rising stars out there in our industry or not that you would like to elevate or just give a shout out to for the work that they're doing?
Yes. I am such a fan of Tara Bosch from Smart Sweets.
Okay.
She's one of our investors, and she's just been such a mentor to me. Anytime I have anything, I could just, text her, and she is growing this massive company, but is always like so quick to respond, and has helped me a lot on like the mental health side of being a founder as well, which has been more, impactful than actually like the business side. I think what she's doing is incredible.
Awesome. Okay. And personally, any brands or trends that you're following, you've got your eye on, and why?
Yeah. Let's see. In terms of brands, and I'm trying to think. You know what's interesting to me is this like the sea moss gel trend. I don't know if you've heard about it. So
No.
this is like very niche wellness, but I think what really fascinates me is this subculture that is sort of more, like I see it on social media a lot, but it's like the Erewhon, like super, LA wellness influencer
Yes.
culture, where like they pick out these ingredients. It's almost like what chia seeds were probably like 10 years ago, where someone was like, chia seeds, like what is that? Like gels up, like what, I'm never eating that. And then it became this like
A
very
thing.
extreme thing. And so I think, I don't know. I like to see these little micro trends and just sort of bet with myself and predict like what's going to actually become mainstream.
Yeah.
There's this thing called it's SEA. So like the sea,
Like the sea, like the ocean.
So sea moss gel. And apparently it's like really good for gut health. It's sort of like aloe vera, like where it's very healing for your gut and whatever. Anyways, but it's like this, it's just so fascinating to me because this disgusting looking like gel and people are putting like gooping it into their smoothies and eating this shit up. And I'm like, and people are charging, they're charging like $20
of course
jar for this stuff at Erewhon. And so that's kind of stuff to me is so fascinating because objectively you're like, this should not succeed. You're like, it's expensive. It looks gross. Like it sounds gross, but then you have the, this like wellnessy influencer kind of, niche that just blows it up. So that's what's, I don't know. I'm just fascinated by stuff like that. But that's one thing that I've been following. And I'm like, I wonder, like, I just can't imagine that ever being sold at Kroger or Walmart.
You
like,
never, girl, you just never know, right?
You never know. You never know.
Stranger things.
Yes. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this has been awesome. We've been talking with Allie Bonar, CEO, Chief Vibe Officer, and co-founder at Oat Haus. Allie, where can people learn about you and your company?
Yeah. So you can find me personally. I'm just on Instagram. It's just my name at Allie Bonar. And then same thing with our company. It's actually oat.haus, HAUS on Instagram. And then that's also our website there's no .com. It's just oat.haus.
Awesome.
And then in stores, Sprouts, Whole Foods, Fresh Market. We have a store locator. You can look at on our site. I don't need to list a whole. Laundry, but
we'll be here for 30 more minutes.
Right.
I'm sure.
Well, not that long. Maybe one.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time today. I really have enjoyed this time and learning more about what you're up to. I really like how I love the impact that you're having on the community and challenging everyone to think differently about how we approach product development and product marketing in the marketplace. So thank you for that work that you're doing.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for just, giving me the space to share my story and everyone for listening.
Yeah. And I'm going to thank the listeners for your time today. Hey, if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day. And we'll catch you next time on the Gooder Podcast.
Produced by Heartcast Media.